doing today? It's your boy JJ Domination, and today we're here to talk about the NFL Week 15 recap, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, I did not go 10-6 this week. I went 11-5, so we're slowly getting better. So let's go ahead and start off with the Thursday night football game. And by the way, a lot of these games, I'm gonna be real, going back and watching them, not really a whole lot to talk about with a lot of these teams. So if I do breeze through a game that featured your favorite team, I apologize. There just really wasn't a whole lot to talk about from my perspective. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started with the Thursday night football game between the New York Jets and the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, the Baltimore Ravens won 42-21. And let's just go ahead and get started, you know? No real takeaways with Baltimore. I mean, they dominated like we expected. And this game, to me, was really about the Jets' offense. And I'm going to go ahead and give the Jets' offense a ton of credit here. They were definitely encouraging to watch. And just by clearly looking at the tape and just watching them play live or whatever, you could tell that this was the best, you know, Sam Darnold performance all year. Maybe not statistically, but he definitely looked impressive considering the level of competition he was playing. This was a interesting game as well for Jamison Crowder. He had a big day as well, you know. He let's see, he like dropped an easy touchdown there. That was weird. He was like wide open, and then the following play he catches a contested touchdown with, I forgot who was in coverage on the play. I want to say it was maybe Marcus Peters. But yeah, it was just a very interesting day for him. Statistically, he did have a great game. 2 touchdowns, I believe 6 catches, almost 100 yards. So he played well. Definitely shout out to Jamison Crowder. Nothing really to say about Baltimore. I mean, it's really getting not competitive, but repetitive at this point. You know, like Lamar Jackson played well. He had 5 touchdowns, 212 passing yards. Did some damage on the ground. He did pass Michael Vick's rushing yards record in a season, so congratulations to him on that. But really no big takeaways here for the Ravens. I mean, they kind of did what we expected them to do, and that's, you know, really dominate this game. They did that. However, the Jets offense was better than, you know, a lot of people expected, including myself, going into that game. Bears at Packers. My Green Bay Packers taking care of business 21-13. You know, it's interesting. I was asked basically before the game by a friend of mine, hey, you know, what do you think this score is going to be for the Packer game? And I said, I think the Packers are going to win 20-13, and the game ended up being 21-13. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'm not really good at predicting scores, so it was just kind of interesting that I was pretty darn close on that one. But let's go ahead and talk about the game. The Packers defense played well for about 3 quarters, but they almost broke there in the 4th quarter. I kind of hate when Mike Pettin gets really conservative in the 4th quarter. Like, no, just don't do that. Like, you know the Bears are going to try to march down the field and win that game, because that game means a lot to them as well. If they lose, they're eliminated. And, you know, you have to keep your foot on their necks. You know, you're playing the Chicago Bears, your most hated rival, the longest rivalry in the NFL. Like, you have to balls to the wall, you know, foot on the gas. You can't just fuck off after a few drives. You know what I mean? Aaron Rodgers, you know, he was actually good in this game. I know the stats will say that, you know, he really wasn't all that great, but he did have some drops in this game. His receivers did drop some balls, including Devontae Adams on a pass. But, you know, Aaron Rodgers did actually play good. Really not a whole lot of pressure from the Chicago Bears defense in this game. Brian Bulaga completely shut down Khalil Mack, made him a non-factor. So, you know, I don't want to poke fun at Khalil Mack. It's getting kind of easy at this point. But Brian Bulaga owned that matchup, you know, and for like the 2nd time this year as well. So nice to see Brian Bulaga healthy. Marquez Valdes-Scantling and Geronimo Allison, they're both terrible. And Matt LaFleur actually came out and said that he's looking to get Jake Kumerow more playing time. Definitely, because he's not the best route runner, but that's a guy that you can scheme open and get him the ball in space, and he can do something decent. Like, he's not a great athlete, but he can catch the football. You just have to scheme him open. And in this league, as long as you can catch the football, to me, you can be schemed open. Your routes don't even have to be all that great. Just get the guy in space, let him catch it, get the yards. You know, like wide receiver has become an easier position these days. Like you don't have to be Julio Jones or Calvin Johnson as an athlete anymore. Like I feel like damn near any caliber of college receiver can come into the league and play wide receiver. It's all about whether or not you're in the right scheme and you have the ability to get open if you're not in the right scheme. So just little things like that. Mitchell Trubisky actually was pretty good in this game. I've been hearing a lot of people kind of shitting on him in this game, saying he went back to old Mitchell Trubisky. Yes, he did have some negative plays. Yes, he had some bad throws. Yes, he got picked off by a defensive lineman, but he really didn't play that bad. You got to think the man almost won this game, basically with just him and Anthony Miller and Allen Robinson, who, you know, all three of them played well in this game. And, you know, Jair did about what he could against Allen Robinson. But you got to think, Jair's like 5'10", trying to cover a 6'2", 6'3" Allen Robinson. And Kevin King, this is his first game back, because I think he missed last week. And, yeah, he looked terrible, predictable, right? Like, he just giving up a bunch of yards and a bunch of good catches or whatever. And that's really the story of the game, really. Like, Kevin King, everyone was coming at him. Everyone was targeting him. And also, the real difference maker for Green Bay, though, defensively was Kenny Clark. And, you know, over the past month, man, he's really been heating up. And he dominated the run game early. It was really hard for this team to run the football. They almost had to exclusively throw the football. Kenny Clark just dominated, you know, whether it was a double team, whether he was one-on-one with the center, Cody Whitehair, and he completely worked James Daniels like several times in this game. And then Rashawn Gary, you know, first-round rookie from Michigan, who Green Bay drafted 12th overall. He had his first sack at home. Good for him. Hasn't really played as much as you'd like to see him play. Like, he does come in on certain packages. But you have to think, you know, Green Bay did also, you know, go out and spend money on Preston and Zadarius Smith. So, yeah, you're not going to see him play a whole lot. But in the times that he has played, he's gotten good pressure, just hasn't been able to finish. Well, in that game, he did get a sack on Trubisky, so shout out to him. Patriots at Bengals, we did see the New England Patriots take care of business 34-13. It was looking pretty competitive early. It was like 10-10 with like 3 minutes left, I think, in like the second quarter. I don't know. It was a really weird game. It's like the tale of two halves, really. But James White was the Patriots' leading receiver, and he's more of their third down / receiving back. Like, he's not really the guy you want to go in as like your number one receiver. Maybe as your third best receiver, yeah, that's fine, but not your second. Or I mean, not your leading receiver, you know what I mean? Julian Edelman, really a non-factor in this game. Clearly, it looked like he was playing hurt, and he only had 2 catches for 9 yards in that game. So, yeah, you could tell the man was just playing hurt. You know, like, I don't know what to say, really. I mean, he just didn't look good. N'Keal Harry, he had a good game. They actually gave him, like, a rushing attempt as well. He did get a touchdown in the red zone as well. So, N'Keal Harry, you know, getting more reps, getting more time, boosting his confidence. And I feel like if N'Keal Harry can get going, this receiving core, I think, will play much better than it has. And like I said, this receiving core has talent. There are guys on this team in the receiving core that can play, but, you know, Patriot fans and, you know, Brady defenders will tell you that the receiving core is trash and those guys can't play. Nah, you want to see a good team with a bad receiving core. Look at Green Bay, you know, look at Buffalo. You know, those are teams that you want to look at. The Patriots have Julian Edelman, Mohamed Sanu, who hasn't played well, by the way. This was actually a pretty bad game for him. N'Keal Harry, who looks like he's starting to come along. And, of course, James White, who might be one of the, you know, better non-elite pass catchers out of the backfield. Like, he's not Christian McCaffrey or Joe Mixon or Le'Veon Bell as receivers, but, you know, he's not bad either. He's just not an elite guy. I mean, N'Keal Harry would be the second best receiver on the Packers and on the Bills, so I really don't want to hear shit from Patriot fans. Like, just grow up, figure out how to get it to work, you know. And let's see, Rex Burkhead, he scored a rushing touchdown against his old team. Remember, he was on the Cincinnati Bengals. They let him go, and the Patriots pick him up. And the only consistent player that the Bengals have, it seems like, is Joe Mixon. He had another good game here. played very well. He just seems to be the only consistent player they have. And then the second half, really, for the Patriots, really wasn't much to do with offense. It was really the defense setting up the offense. I mean, you had a pick six by Stephon Gilmore. I think he finished the game with 2 interceptions. I believe there was also like a blocked punt. Like, the Patriots, I mean, they just played well. And I think J.C. Jackson had a pick in the fourth quarter. So this was just a pretty damn good performance in the second half of the Patriots defense. As for the Bengals, they lose another game, inching closer to getting Joe Burrow. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Seahawks at the Carolina Panthers. Seattle wins 30-24, but I think the score is a little misleading. I'll talk about that here in a second. But I tell you what, man, it was a good day for fantasy owners. You know, if you had Christian McCaffrey, Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, and Chris Carson, I mean, damn, you got a lot of points from that game because all 4 of them balled out. And it's interesting because I'm in a 12-man league and I actually have all 4 of these guys, which is why I brought it up. Like, I only drafted 2 of those guys, McCaffrey and Wilson. I made a trade for Tyler Lockett like week 2 or 3 of the season. And Chris Carson, I don't know why, but one of my friends dropped Chris Carson. I don't know what made him do it. It was so stupid. But, I mean, if you're going to make a mistake like that, of course I'm going to capitalize on it. I mean, it's not my problem. It's not my fault, you know? Like, you would do it too if you were in the same situation. But no more Josh Gordon. You know, like, he actually did have a good catch in this game. He did throw an interception on a trick play, but, you know, Josh Gordon, again, got busted for a PED violation. I don't know exactly what. I haven't really heard much details outside of that, but he's suspended indefinitely. Not going to provide further comments or whatever. You know, I'm just going to leave it at that. He's suspended indefinitely. Not going to comment much more. Will Grier is actually now going to be announced to be the starting quarterback for Carolina this upcoming week. You know, last week I did talk about on the weekly recap that Kyle Allen, he's fine, but he's just a backup, really. I mean, a lot of people don't want to admit it, but he's a backup. You can't enter next season with Kyle Allen as your number 1 quarterback, and Carolina invested a 3rd-round pick into Will Grier, and we've all been kind of wondering, okay, well, Carolina's season's been over for a little bit. How come Will Grier hasn't at least gotten an opportunity to play? And it looks like we're going to really get to see him play. He's got 2 weeks left. He's got a game... Again, I'm trying to remember. Okay, so he's got a game against the Colts. And week 17, do they play the Saints again? I think so. So that'll be interesting. We'll see what he does the last 2 weeks. Maybe the Saints rest their players, or maybe they try to fight for that first round bye, which is definitely possible. But we'll see what Will Grier does, even if he gets to play in week 17, because he's only been announced for the 1 game against the Colts. So we'll wait and see on that. KJ Wright had a big game, 2 interceptions in this one. Both pretty opportunistic. Well, not really. One was clean. The other one was pretty opportunistic. And then Bobby Wagner had an interception. And with Bobby Wagner, he did get hurt in this game. He went down in the 4th quarter, and as soon as he went down, this team was able to score points. You know, like, they had only had 10 points, Carolina that being. Bobby Wagner goes down, and they go down the field and score 2 quick touchdowns. So just goes to show you, I guess, how impactful Bobby Wagner is, that he went down and this team was able to drive down the field. Christian McCaffrey, of course, had a very clutch play in this game. Kyle Allen threw a pass. It kind of hit off of McCaffrey's shoulder or something, and Ugo Amadi, the slot corner / safety from Oregon, I think he was like a mid-round draft pick, like 4th or 5th round. He ends up getting the interception, but before it officially counts as an interception, right as he takes that second step and establishes possession, McCaffrey, with the smarts, was able to punch the ball out, resulting in an incomplete pass. So Christian McCaffrey saved Kyle Allen's stat line even more, I guess. Like, I hate to shit on Kyle Allen, but I mean, he could have had 4 interceptions. McCaffrey definitely saved them right there. It is what it is, though. I'm excited to see what Will Grier can do. Since I'm in the Fantasy Football Championship and I have Christian McCaffrey, Will Grier, if you do watch this, I doubt you will, but if you do, just throw it to number 22. It's the safest bet. Just do it. It's the smart thing to do. Take the check down. All right. Texans versus Titans. The Tennessee Titans did lose this game 24-21, but a couple of I'm not going to say fluky plays, but a couple of unfortunate plays in this game. Anthony Frickser, I think he's like the backup tight end or something, or a third string tight end. If Delaney Walker were healthy, technically he'd be tight end 3. He ran a slant route. The ball just goes right through his hands, and Whitney Merciless is able to get the interception, and he damn near returned it for a touchdown. But I think on that drive, Kenny Stills ended up getting a touchdown. And then there was like another play. I think there was like a blocked kick or something, and Houston goes on to score another touchdown. I think Kenny Stills got another touchdown off of a turnover. So a 14-point swing right there. You know, Tennessee, that's the difference between winning and losing, is those two unfortunate plays. But I do want to talk about A.J. Brown once again, and I'm going to keep saying this over and over because I really liked A.J. Brown in this draft. You know, I looked at him and DK Metcalf, and I was like, yeah, these are the two best receivers in the class, and they played for the same goddamn college football team, which is just insane. You know, DK obviously had the physical makeup to be like a number one receiver, and I'm so glad he went to Seattle because he's going to be playing with a great quarterback. I'm going to hate having the Packers to play against him, but he went to a great situation, and I just want to remind Eagles fans, you could have had him, but you drafted J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who really just isn't that good, to be honest. And you know, you look at A.J. Brown, I loved everything about him. You know, like, he had good size. He could play in the slot, could play on the outside, did a lot after the catch as a receiver. So, to me, A.J. Brown was just kind of like the total package. Like, he wasn't a number one receiver to me. He was more of like a number 2, but he plays in this offense as the guy in the receiving core, and if he has to be the guy in the receiving core, so be it, because he's doing a great job at it. To me, though, when I do look at the Houston Texans, it's clear Will Fuller is the X factor. Like, obviously, you can do good without Will Fuller, but having that vertical passing threat, we've talked about this before a few times on the weekly recaps, having a vertical threat like Will Fuller opens up the passing game. And even though the one vertical pass, or the one deep shot that Watson did take, even though it was not caught by Will Fuller, it did draw pass interference. So having that deep threat who can actually take the top off the defense and can actually be a legitimate threat in the receiving game, it definitely does a number. And he did draw a pass interference by throwing a deep shot to Will Fuller. Didn't catch it, but he drew pass interference, which is just as effective as him catching it, because it was a spot foul down at the 1 yard line, which they went on to score. So very impactful stuff right there from Will Fuller. We already talked about Kenny Stills having the 2 touchdowns. Great job by him. And Deshaun Watson had like a tipped interception to, I think his name is Jaron Brown, right? One of the middle linebackers over there in Tennessee. And then Kenny Vaccaro kind of jumped the route. I think he was looking to throw it to, damn, it escapes me at the moment. I want to say Jordan Akins, could be wrong. He was trying to throw it to one of his receiving options, and Vaccaro just jumped the route, made a great play. But yeah, Tennessee ended up losing that game, but I'm pretty sure if Tennessee, there's a scenario where Tennessee could still get the 6th seed, so it's not completely out of the realm of possibility. But we'll talk more about that later with the Steelers game. Dolphins versus Giants, you know, welcome back Saquon. You know, this is like the first big game he's had since his injury. You know, he just hasn't looked as explosive. Like, yeah, he's still a great player, but he hasn't really looked as explosive as he once was earlier in the season or in his rookie season. And he came out here and played a great game against Miami. I get it, you know, Miami, not the best competition, but hey, they've been pretty competitive against a lot of teams this season, so say what you want to about Miami. You know, the Giants' defensive line dominated, as they should. I mean, it was a huge personnel mismatch. heading into the game, because the Dolphins' offensive line is literally the worst in football, and the Giants have all this draft capital and money tied up into the front seven. Yeah, I would hope they dominate a shit offensive line and make Patrick Laird look even more pedestrian than he already is. Like, I would hope so. You know, like the Giants' defensive line even got a safety. And Golden Tate had an awesome 51-yard receiving touchdown. It was his only catch of the game as well, and it was a pretty difficult play to make after catching the ball in tight coverage. Not Minkah Fitzpatrick, but Ryan Fitzpatrick, excuse me, showing his wheels a little bit. He had to run for his life a little bit in this game. He looked pretty good, showing off the wheels. I don't remember him ever being as fast as he showed, but I guess so. I guess he is pretty fast. I guess. I don't know. He just looked faster than I ever imagined. But Eli, you know, had a typical Eli game. You know, he had 3 interceptions, and they still won. And now his all-time record is 117 and 117. So congrats to Eli and what could possibly be his last hurrah. But, you know, we'll see. Congrats to Eli Manning for the win. Didn't have the best performance, but hey, they won the game. Eagles at Redskins. The Eagles holding off the Washington Redskins 31-27. Pretty good game here from Carson Wentz. I thought he was really good this game. I was kind of semi-critical of him against the Giants. This game he was much better. He only had 2 healthy wide receivers. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who to me is just not that good. Kind of talked about him earlier with the A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf talk. And Greg Ward, who is a former college quarterback converted to wide receiver. So yeah, that's what Carson Wentz is working with. But I want to talk about the other quarterback for a second, Dwayne Haskins. Easily his best game of his career and of the season. He looked really sharp in this game. Did some good things as well. Good play designs from the offensive coordinator and Bill Callahan, of course. And then Scary Terry and Steve Sims, man. Both of those receivers for Washington played well. Yes, Philadelphia's secondary is hot shit, but both of those guys did play well. And Carson Wentz, like I said, man, he was just insane. Miles Sanders had a great game as a receiver and a runner. They basically used Boston Scott as their slot receiver. He is a running back who was really just returning kicks at the start of the season, but you know, you look at how the game transpired, they basically used him as a slot receiver. And then Adrian Peterson, another awesome game. He scored a touchdown, and he's had a really good month of December. He's like breaking a new milestone, it seems like, every week. Excuse me. So I do have to give AP some credit there, you know. Like, there was a time where everybody was saying he was washed up and he couldn't play anymore, including myself. Like, he really didn't look that good with the Saints. And then he went to the Cardinals, I believe, and he just didn't look good with the Cardinals. And, you know, all of a sudden he comes to Washington and he's still looking like AP out there. Not prime Adrian Peterson, but he's looking like AP. He's looking pretty good, and he deserves credit for that. So good shit, AP. Good job. Broncos at the Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs won this snowfest of a game 23-3. Not really a big surprise that they beat Denver. But I do want to just acknowledge that it was a snow game. You gotta love these good old snow games, but yes, it was snowing. It did have an impact on both teams, so I don't want to really hear any excuses from Denver about how shit they played, because both teams played in the same elements. So I don't really want to hear it. But this Chiefs defense, they're heating up. Last 4 weeks, the Chiefs defense has been playing very well. Now, I don't know what they're going to look like in the playoffs defensively, because obviously you're not going to be seeing Denver in the playoffs, you know, 3 times or potentially 4 times if you end up being a wild card team. But you know, when you look at how that Chiefs defense has been playing, I mean, it's pretty encouraging. You know, Tyrann Mathieu continues to be a playmaker. Chris Jones is dominating once again, starting to get more pressure. You look at Frank Clark, you know, he's slowly starting to come around again. Really hasn't had a great season with Kansas City, but he's slowly starting to get it around. And this team also made a claim on Terrell Suggs And by the sounds of it, he is actually going to report to Kansas City. He's not going to retire or whatever the speculation was. He is actually going to show up by the sounds of it. So that's good. The Chiefs get even more pass rush, and that's definitely going to help out the secondary. Because in the AFC, I mean, you look at it, the Patriots' offensive line is banged up, so you can definitely, get some good pressure on them. Baltimore, that's going to be tough, but it's a team that you've already beaten this year. You look at a team like Houston, we know their offensive line is bad, but again, they beat you this season, so, that's interesting. Pittsburgh has a good offensive line, but they don't really have anyone that scares you offensively, so maybe you're able to get the job done against them. Buffalo, it'd be an interesting matchup, but I think I'd favor the Chiefs in that one. So, I mean, for Kansas City, I think they are slowly starting to be a little underrated again. They were definitely overrated coming into the season. Like, I actually picked Kansas City to be in the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I guess we were all overrating them, including me. But with all this buzz with Baltimore, which they've deserved it, and then you look at San Francisco and how they've been playing, you look at, like the Saints, the Seahawks, the Vikings catching fire, the Packers. I mean, you just look at all these other teams who are getting the hype, and Kansas City has slowly slid under the radar, and to me, I think they should appreciate that. They should appreciate the fact they are sliding under the radar, and they're not the focal point of all of the off-season, or not the off-season, but all of the regular season talk about contention. That's okay. It's not a bad thing. But Drew Lock, he didn't look that good in this game. Granted, a snowy game. Willing to give him an excuse there. But he didn't look good, Everyone else played in the snow as well, so don't really have any takeaways. Let's pump the brakes on Drew Lock. Yes, snowy game. It's its third game in his career. Let's take it easy before we just start saying stuff like, oh, John Elway finally hit on a quarterback. Like, it's been 3 games. Chill. Let me see this for a season at least. Bucks at Lions. Tampa Bay ended up winning 38-17, I'm pretty sure. Or was it 31-17? Here, let me check. What was the score for that game? 38-17. Okay. So Tampa Bay has quietly won 4 games in a row. So that's interesting. Jameis Winston, speaking of interesting, the first quarterback in NFL history to have back-to-back 450-yard games as a quarterback. Very impressive. And he did it in the second game without Mike Evans and for at least a quarter without Chris Godwin. So to me, that's just really impressive. And I want to give a shout out to Brashad Perryman. So I don't know if you guys remember, but Brashad Perryman last year was on the Cleveland Browns, okay? A former first-round pick. He's on his second team. And Brashad Perryman historically has never been a good route runner. Pretty bad at it, actually. But he is a vertical passing threat. He's a deep threat, a very fast player. I mean, that's just kind of his specialty. And he was with Cleveland, and he was looking like he was going to be the third receiver for Cleveland next year after having kind of a little bit of an emergence over there. And then they made the trade for OBJ, and, Brashad Perryman's like, nah, I'm not re-signing with Cleveland. I'm going to go to Tampa Bay. And it's probably the best career decision he ever made, was leaving Cleveland, the Super Bowl darling of training camp, and going to Tampa Bay, because he's actually been playing very well. And hell, Jameis Winston's getting this dude the ball, so good for him. A first-round pick, basically labeled as a bust, finding a role here in Tampa Bay. Good for him. Deserves a lot of credit. Let's see, Todd Bowles, he's slowly starting to figure out this defense. We did see that Sean Murphy Bunting had like a pick 6. They're able to get good pressure in this game as well. Slowly starting to figure it out. Like, their front 7, there's some good players in it, obviously. Vita Vea having a good second year. You look at Shaq Barrett totally breaking out for Tampa Bay. And then you look at, like, Devin White, Levante David. Like, this front 7, they have a lot of talent. And we didn't even talk about, Ndamukong Suh yet. But that front 7 can play. Their secondary, they could use, like, a veteran or 2 in the secondary to really, mentor the young guys a little bit, because they have like one of the youngest secondaries in football, and to me, if they had like a couple of veterans to really help with the secondary and with the mentorship and really just trying to get them to be better pro players, I feel like that's just an element that they're missing in terms of their team building. And Todd Bowles, like I said, slowly starting to figure it out. This is his first year with Tampa Bay, so obviously you couldn't have expected him to just completely turn around the defense, but they do have one of the better run defenses in football, and they've been playing pretty good the past month. Like, not all great defensive outings, but this team has been playing well. They've been winning games, and I don't really have much of a takeaway for Detroit other than Danny Amendola and Kenny Golladay played good. Good to see Amendola playing good. Golladay, we know he's a stud and up-and-coming wide receiver in this league, so yeah, that's all I really have to say. Browns versus Cardinals. Shout out to Kenyon Drake. I've had some pretty vocal opinions about Kenyon Drake as a running back, saying that he is the definition of an average, fine running back. I still stand by that, but he is definitely making the Cardinals running back offseason a whole lot interesting. This is the second big game he's had. He had 4 touchdowns in this game on the ground, 4 total anyway, but he had them all on the ground. And you look at David Johnson, he's starting to get a lesser and lesser role, and he's already expressing some frustrations about it. And he has a big cap hit this upcoming season. I think it's the last year of his 3-year extension, so I'm pretty sure the Cardinals can find a way to get out of that, whether they can release him or trade him. If they decide to keep Kenyon Drake, which is a whole nother discussion. Then you also have Chase Edmonds, who before the injury was playing some really good football. And because Chase Edmonds went down with an injury, that is what pushed the Kenyon Drake trade. So you have a whole lot of moving pieces and a whole lot of parts and narratives really playing into whether or not Kenyon Drake stays. But he's done a good enough job to at least get that contract with Arizona. We'll see if he actually gets it. For me, Kyler Murray played very well. He did have a bad interception to Mac Wilson, but he definitely looked like the better quarterback in this game. This was the battle of the Oklahoma quarterbacks, the Lincoln Riley Bowl pretty much, between Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray looked a hell of a lot better than Baker Mayfield. And I like Baker Mayfield. I still like Baker Mayfield a ton. I honestly do think he is having a sophomore slump. I'm going to stick by it until we get new evidence, and that's not even me building a narrative, it's something we've seen before. We have seen Dak Prescott have a shitty year 2, and then in year 3 he comes out and he looks like an above average franchise caliber quarterback. So for Baker, I don't want to over exaggerate. I mean, there are people already going back to the Johnny Manziel 2.0 comparisons, and I think it's a little ridiculous. I mean, it's basically what y'all did with Prescott. He was garbage in year 2, and y'all were like, oh, he's just another Tebow. He can win games, but he looks like shit. And everybody was going back to that narrative, and it's like, okay, y'all gotta calm down. I don't think it's all Baker. He's played terrible, but I don't think it's all Baker, and I'm going to stand by that. Arizona actually won a pass interference challenge. Kind of shocked by that. But what's my final note say? I don't really have any other takeaways from Cleveland. They're just a bad football team. I don't want to talk about Cleveland. I don't want to. But let's go ahead and move on. Jaguars at Raiders. Did I say the Cardinals score? Yeah, the Cardinals won like 38-24. All right, Jacksonville. They beat those Oakland Raiders 20-16. I don't really have a whole lot of notes for this game, but let's go ahead and talk about it. No offense, really, but this was just kind of a boring game to go back and watch. I mean, it did pick up in the fourth quarter, but man, those first 3 quarters, I could care less about this game. I really could. I do go back and watch all these games. I try to watch as much of them as I can so I can talk about this stuff. Man, this game was just boring to go back and watch. Keelan Cole looked like the best player for either offense out there, and that includes, Leonard Fournette, Darren Waller, all the household names. Keelan Cole looked like the best player for either offense. To me, Derek Carr just kind of meh this game. You know, he was just okay. I wish he would have been a little bit more aggressive with the football, kind of pushed the ball down the field a little bit more. That's kind of my big issue with him. He's kind of been more of a game manager. Not that it's a bad thing because they've been winning football games, but I need Derek Carr to show off what we know he can do, and that's push the ball down the field. He's definitely capable of doing that, and people are trying to tell me, oh, you're wrong about Derek Carr being average. Well, all he's really shown this year is that he's super average, you know, and average isn't a bad thing. I think if you're an average quarterback, you're a good quarterback. I just need Derek Carr to get out of this conservative mindset. Like, it's okay to take a couple of shots, you know, in this offense. It's fine. But outside of that, I don't have any other takeaways. Minshew played well in the second half. That's about it. Let's just move on. Vikings at Chargers. Totally wrong about how the game would turn out. But the Vikings whooped the Chargers' ass 39-10. I thought it would be closer than that. You know, maybe like a, I don't know, 24-20 type of game. That's the vibe I was getting, but the Vikings just came out and played their best game all season in terms of like a complete dominant game. You know, the Chargers, yeah, they're a bad football team, but this was kind of like their version of, let's see, it was kind of like their version of Packers versus Raiders, but on steroids, because this defense played very well. You look at the Vikings defense, they had 7 takeaways and 1 defensive touchdown. Just an insane day for the Minnesota Vikings. Defensively, I think they had like 27 or 26 fantasy points. Like, yeah, they were insane. Melvin Gordon looked really bad. You know, he fumbled twice in this game. He's starting to hurt his own free agency market, because I don't think the Chargers are going to bring him back, and he's really hurting his own market. You know, there are teams out there, you know, like Tampa Bay potentially, maybe Tennessee if they don't want to re-sign Derrick Henry. But there are teams out there that are probably looking at Melvin Gordon thinking, man, he's hurting himself, because I don't know if we should offer him $12 million. We should probably offer him like 7.5. You know, like, Melvin Gordon, just a bad game for him. It looked like Dalvin Cook hurt his shoulder again pretty bad, and Alexander Mattison, I think, also got hurt. So from what I've heard about Dalvin Cook, they're saying that it's unlikely he could play in this Green Bay game. They're saying it's probably not a possibility, and I think they're also saying that it's unlikely that he'll play the rest of the regular season, which, if so, I mean, that kind of sucks, and that's a big blow to Minnesota's offense, because while Kirk Cousins has been pretty damn good this season, a lot of it has to do with the run game being successful. And this isn't me taking a knock or a shot at Kirk Cousins, but let's face it, the run game does help out all quarterbacks. And with a dominant run game, and with Dalvin Cook looking like, you know, a top 10 MVP candidate, it's opened up the field for Kirk Cousins. That's why Kirk Cousins has been so money on the play action passes, because of Dalvin Cook's effectiveness. And if he is hurt for this Green Bay game, and if Mike Boone has to start for the Vikings against the Packers, you know, it's going to be tough out there. Probably not a good situation. And Phillip Rivers, he was bad, horrible this game. I don't think they should bring him back. Them being the Chargers, I'm kind of done with Phillip Rivers for now. I don't care. Rams at Cowboys. Cowboys ended up beating the shit out of the Rams like 44-21. Zeke and Tony Pollard went off in the run game. Dak played better in a more simplified role. You know, instead of like, oh, it's Dak's team, it's Zeke's team. How about run the ball with Zeke, open up the passing game, and let Dak do Dak? I think Dak was like 15 of 23 for like 212 yards. Like, yeah, at this point, I'll take that from Dak Prescott. Just win me the game. And I know it's basically like what we have seen before with Dak Prescott, where we used to call him a game manager, but we know at this point that's kind of what he is. He's an above average game manager. You know, that's just kind of what he is. You know, I've been trying to give Dak Prescott credit, but let's face it, this is a great role for him to have, and that's being a game manager. Like, it is what it is. You look at the Cowboys' defensive line, they dominated the Rams' offensive line. Not going to be the first time we talk about Lions getting dominated. You know, we're going to talk about that Monday Night Football game as well. But you look at Sean Lee, he played like his best game in ages. I mean, holy crap. Sean Lee looked like a whole new player out there. So that's good to see, you know, from him. Shout out to Sean Lee. And shout out to the Cowboys actually beating an above 500 football team. I know they got to be feeling really good about their chances against Philadelphia, because it would have been one thing to barely win, you know, that Rams game. Like, they win 27-24. That's one thing. But to go out there and completely dominate this team and at one point lead at 38-7, like, to me, that speaks volumes. I think the Cowboys should be feeling confident that they can go into Philly and get like 600 yards of total offense. They should feel that way because of how they played this game. Falcons at the 49ers, man, I got to give myself a pat on the back. This was my upset of the week. The Falcons ended up playing very well. They won 29-22. I'm really proud of this pick because I'm going to be honest, I said it as a complete joke. I was just like, yeah, this is what the Falcons do all the time. They win a bunch of games that they shouldn't win late in the year, kind of hurt their draft pick a little bit. It's just kind of what they do. They did it last year to us. They're doing it again. And, you know, the injuries finally caught up with the 49ers. I think that's what it eventually comes down to. And really, in all honesty, that is like the real reason why I did pick the Falcons, because Richard Sherman was out. Not necessarily because of anyone else, but because Richard Sherman's out. The only corner that's going to stand a chance against Julio one-on-one was out. So, yeah, it was a pretty easy decision. You know, Julio Jones, as much as I love George Kittle, let's face it, Julio's the best player in this game. And I like George Kittle a lot. He's probably the second best player in this game. I like Nick Bosa. I like Grady Jarrett. But Julio Jones was the best player in this game. Plain and simple. Going into it and coming out of it. You look at Matt Ryan. He played a pretty impressive game. Arguably his most impressive game. Not statistically, but he made the plays. And he just played well overall, especially down the stretch. A good job by the officiating crew in those crucial moments. You know, like they did reverse the touchdown that wasn't a touchdown, but we're not sure if it's a touchdown, non-touchdown play to Austin Hooper. And then they made the right call with the Julio Jones barely crossing the pylon, but he crossed the line or whatever. So they did a good job of reversing that for a touchdown. And then, you know, I don't know why the Falcons didn't go for the 2-point conversion, but they took a knee. I don't know. I'd have probably went for it. If it's not there, just throw it away. But I understand kind of what Dan Quinn and those boys were thinking. And then the Falcons, you know, at the end of the game, you know, the 49ers trying to lateral back and forth and create something. The Falcons scoop it up and score again. I think there's an interesting question that has to be asked. Does Dan Quinn, with a huge win like that against the 49ers, despite how bad they've been, did Dan Quinn buy himself another season? I think that's a real question. Like, to me, I don't think Dan Quinn should be back. I'm going to be honest. I've been saying that all year. But, hey, after a win like that, you have to ask yourself, does he get another season to give this thing another shot? I mean, the Falcons do have the talent, but just like a lot of teams, they've been hurt. And the Falcons, you know, they've been hurt by injuries just like all other teams. But the Falcons don't have the best depth in the world, and it kind of shows, especially this season. Like, if Julio's out and you trade Mohamed Sanu and Austin Hooper's not playing, like, yeah, I know you're asking for 3 players to be out, and then you have to look at the depth of the team, but hey, a lot of teams do have good depth. That's why they're able to afford an injury or two, because they can make it work with who they got. And with the Falcons, not so much. But hey, they did it this game. They faced an injury-riddled 49ers team. I kind of had a feeling the Falcons would win, hence my upset of the week. Bills at Steelers. The game pretty much played out the way I expected. I thought it'd be low scoring, and I thought Josh Allen would make a play or two more than Devlin Hodges. I mean, I'd hope so. Tre'Davious White, easily the best player in this game. He played a spectacular game, and he's playing like a top 3 corner in the league. I'm pretty sure I've been saying that over and over. But if you ask me right now, like, who are the 3 best corners in football, I'd probably say Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White, and Marlon Humphrey. I'd probably say those are the three. You know, Jair Alexander would be in that conversation too. Richard Sherman would be in that conversation if healthy. Like, there's a whole lot of guys that'd be in there. But for me, Tre'Davious White, probably the second best corner. A great game by the Steelers and the Bills defense. But like I said, it just came down to Josh Allen making an extra play more than Devlin Hodges, who, you know, Devlin Hodges was horrible this game. That's safe to say. He had a couple of good throws early, but overall he was bad. And Josh Allen really, even though he did make an extra play more than Hodges, that tells me everything I need to know. Josh Allen was fine this game. He wasn't spectacular. He was fine. He was okay. Colts at Saints. Congratulations to Drew Brees on breaking Peyton Manning's all-time touchdown record in a career. However, that wasn't the only record he broke on that throw. He actually broke his own personal consecutive completions record by getting his 20th consecutive completion, or 21st, one of the two. But congratulations to Drew Brees. He broke multiple records on that play, so congratulations to him. Jacoby Brissett, he looked rattled out there. You know, faced a lot of pressure, and, you know, he just didn't look that good. You know, bad game under the bright lights. The Colts offensive line got their asses kicked by the Saints D-line, and they did that without Sheldon Rankins or Marcus Davenport, who both guys are going to be out for the season. So really encouraging if you're the Saints to go up against one of the best offensive lines and completely dominate like that. And they also put in a claim for Janoris Jenkins, and he's going to be coming to this team next week. So yeah, they get one washed up Giants corner, and they get one that's just really bad in Eli Apple. So yeah, you got the Giants secondary now. Congratulations. Only 19 rushing yards for Marlon Mack. Pretty discouraging. 11 carries, 19 yards. I know this team was down by a ton of points. I mean, I'm not going to ask a team that's down 27-0 to just run the football, but damn, 19 yards, like, that's kind of rough right there. And then Alvin Kamara really hasn't looked as explosive since coming back from the injury, but had a couple of decent plays here and there. And then Michael Thomas, what a beast, man. Can't guard Mike. It's his Twitter handle, and it's his way of life, because you can't guard Mike. It's that simple. And he's only 11 receptions away from breaking Marvin Harrison's record. And who knows, he'll probably get that in a game, because he had like double-digit receptions in this game. So it should be easy peasy, or yeah, easy peasy lemon squeezy, however that saying goes. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this little weekly recap, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.